All right, everybody. This here is Magic Underwood, and I'm here with my guest, Mr. Formerly TCGU, one of the best UFS players I've ever met, one of the nicest guys I've ever met,
Thank you.
Mr. Tamren Cardwell. That's how you pronounce your name, right?
Yes. My parents were very unique with my first birthday present.
That's fine. That's fine. So give us a little introduction about yourself. How do you get into card games, and what adventures did you have that led you into Universus today?
Yeah, for sure. So, card games for me started out back with Pokemon cards, right? Everybody had Pokemon cards. And I went to local game stores, comic book shops, and played Pokemon all the time, but was trash, just like every little kid. And so I went to the leagues and decided that collecting was way more fun because I've got that real competitor spirit. I was just tired of losing all the time, and I didn't understand how to get better at card games. From there, collected Pokemon cards, and then ran all the way up until like middle school, high school, and I started to get into Yu-Gi-Oh! And Yu-Gi-Oh! Was like super fun. I remember playing Yu-Gi-Oh! With my dad and him just mollywhopping me all the time. Him let me win sometimes for sure, but it was always him smacking me up until I got into the tail end of high school, where I started to meet up at a local game stop or game shop, and I had a friend named Alex Legrand who really pushed me to go to a tournament. Otherwise, I was just like real casual kitchen table Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Where Blue Eyes White Dragon ruled, and if you got over 3,000, it was an accomplishment. Well, I went into the competitive environment for the first time at the Yu-Gi-Oh event, and it was honestly life-changing. The environment, how cool the people were, making a ton of friends, and realizing that the card text meant something in like a grander scheme, and like the puzzle started fitting into the different slots. Like it really started to make my gears turn, and I found that I loved it. I loved the interactions of like making A work with B in tandem with C, D, E, F, G, you know? And so proceeded to play Yu-Gi-Oh! For a bit, ended up getting demoed by Miles Tyler, owner of Legendary Wolf Games, and he tried to get me to play UFS or Universus, and I didn't want to. I was like, I'm a Yu-Gi-Oh! Guy. We don't do that. No, gross. Ew, my game's the best. Until a couple years later, he finally sat me down and demoed me again, and then something clicked when we had the Mega Man set into the game. And the first character that I ever played was Dr. Wily One Dot, the first Dr. Wily that came out of the structure deck. And so I was like, wow, this is really cool. How awesome. And then as I started to leave and walk out the door, Tyler Clark from TCGU, one of the co-founders, just gave me the deck that I demoed with. He just gave it to me. And I was like, yes, I have a deck. And he goes, yeah. I'll give you this to you, but you have to promise that next week you'll come back and play. And so I did. I was a man of my word. Obviously, I took the deck and studied up and tried to play, and it has been a roller coaster ever since, for sure.
Mine's is pretty similar, but I actually added in Magic, so I'm surprised that you haven't gotten into Magic. So did you
So
weren't you just not
I
interested,
know
or?
I know how to play Magic, but when I was growing up, as an impressionable youth, I didn't know. I didn't have other people who played Magic around me, and so card games is very social, right?
Yeah.
It's very hard to get into a card game all by yourself. It's very, very difficult. And so I just didn't have people to play with me. I'm sure if I had one or two friends who were like, "Hey, here's a Magic deck, play," I'd be into it too. Because now I know how to play Magic. I enjoy Magic. It's just not my go-to game because I don't have all this prior knowledge of what Celtic Guardian does, you know?
Yeah. Oh no, that's fine. That's fine. Like,
Yeah.
trust me. Like, competitive Magic is like the worst of them all. But then again, if you put money into the game, that's what happens. I mean, a
Yeah,
lot
yeah,
of money.
yeah.
All right,
Well,
so
it's stakes and pride, right? Like anytime that you like invest something, people say card games are like really nerdy, and why would you pay for that? I equate it to like a muscle car, right? If I
yeah,
put all of this money and time and energy into like my cool race car, and then I lose the race, I'm gonna feel bad. Just like if I spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on magic cards and then bust her out, go X2, you know?
yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
I know that feeling all too well. So, so when you started back then, I remember when it first started, it was called UFSU, but then it switched into TCGU. Were you the one
Right,
that?
right, right.
So, were you the one that started it, or did somebody else start it?
Oh, that's a good question. So the channel was originally started with three people. We had um, James Stevens, we had Miles Tyler, and Tyler Clark. They all were working together, and I was actually it started out as a podcast. Um, on on UFS on Legendary Wolf's website. It was UFSU, and Tyler and James did the brunt of the legwork, right? And so eventually Miles just stopped being interested in the podcast. He didn't really have anything going on, and so those two proceeded to take over the channel and kind of run with it as their own. The only reason that I got involved, not to toot my own horn, is I'm kind of a face on a camera. I've got a bit of charisma, and so where they would take care of all the technical back end stuff, I could lead topics and keep people moving because I have other podcasting experience.
That funny that you said that. I actually believe that to be very true because I'm literally sitting there looking at your deck guides and like your an analyst. I'm sorry,
No, you're good.
your analysis is or whatever on
Yeah.
characters and particularly UFS. I actually find it to be really good. A
Well, thank
lot
you.
of I actually took it a lot into my own, and I'm like tell all of the people in my group or in my subgroup because I'm from the Houston area that
Hmm.
like, hey man, these characters have these weaknesses. You might want to like pay attention. You might want to like do these things to like try and like avert that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. UFS is like really beautiful because you have the options inside of your deck choices of you can either try and patch those holes like you said, or double down and make the strengths even stronger. You know?
Yeah,
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 a lot of versatility in your gameplay.
yeah. And I love it. It's exactly like a fighting game actually.
For
Like,
sure. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and that's what kind of drew me into UFS. Is believe it or not, they Jasco actually had an advertisement on SRK. It's like a little fighting game website where they actually talk about like all the news and fighting game and stuff. And all of a
Okay.
sudden, they just popped up, and I was like instantly like intrigued with it. And I was like, oh, cool.
So what's your go-to fighting game then?
Oh, my go-to fighting game, Street Fighter Five.
Hey, I'm a Street Fighter kid myself. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like my main's been Laura, and ever since
Oh, okay.
my last few patches, I've been like practicing all of her combos since they've gotten a bit easier.
That's
So
rad. That's rad. Maybe one day she'll be in the game. That'll be cool.
I, I was hoping that with the Street Fighter versus Darkstalker set, I was like, oh, she was in
Yeah.
the comic. I was hoping she'd be in there. It's like, oh well.
Maybe one of them deck loadable contents we can get her.
Yeah,
That'd be cool. That'd be super
yeah,
cool.
yeah. So why'd you leave the group?
Oh, good question. I left the group because I am moving out on to my own. I was propositioned by a third party company, which I can't talk about any of this, in order
Oh,
to possibly do some content on their channel. And so, as opposed to ripping the band-aid off way later, I decided to go ahead and just rip the band-aid, cut and run, and do my own type of content that is in parallel to TCG University, because the guys at TCGU, they are good enough they are strong enough at making content that they don't need me. They want me, but they don't need me. And so with this third party operation happening, it was going to be too much to handle of doing both this thing and TCGU at the same time.
Okay. That sounds like
Yeah.
you got a hell of a sponsorship, but that's just me.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we just gotta finish the paperwork.
All right. So do you think that, they'll kind of carry on, like, because you're pretty much the face of TCGU for a long
Yeah.
time. And so do you think that they could be able to keep up and like handle up to the standard that you had once had with the group?
If not my standard, I actually think higher, right?
Okay.
When it comes to content creation, I'm really, really particular about what I wanted and the vision that I had for the channel as the person who was leading it and spearheading it was in a direction that honestly TCGU didn't 100% agree with. Not because my thoughts and choices were wrong, but because my thoughts and choices were different. We're all individual content creators out here, right?
Yeah.
And so with me stepping away from the forefront, now the other members of TCGU get to take up the mantle and make the content that they want to make, which good on them. I know TCGU can and will succeed based on the desires that they have when making the content, you know?
Oh, okay. That's actually
Yeah.
pretty cool. So when you left, what would be the biggest thing you'll miss about TCGU?
Oh, honestly, the campus championships that they did every Tuesday. At time of recording, we haven't been able to get together because of some personal issues in my life, stopping them from being at the studio, which the studio's in my basement, right? I've had some complications personally, and so they just haven't been in the studio for a couple weeks. But behind closed doors, they've said that they're going to be kicking back up production here within the next month of January 2021. And so my personal thing that I'm going to miss is sitting down and having a bunch of people try out, make 8 new decks every week and go battle it out over on Twitch, you know?
That sounds like my group. We we don't per se do tournaments, but we used to go to our little card shop and like would have a bunch of decks to test out.
Yeah.
Now like we kind of parted ways with that card shop and we had just now got back together. We found another one. And we've just been on that one.
For sure.
Sure.
Yeah, one of the big things that I can say when it comes to like making content like the campus championship is there has to be stakes involved, right?
Yeah.
So you said that you don't do tournaments, whether it be locally or whatever. Whenever I came in and I wanted the campus championships to continue, the reason that we didn't just do matches, we wanted to make it a full 8-man bracket every week is because every week you got to follow your favorite character as they ran through the bracket, right? My favorite character is Blanca from Street Fighter, and he wins out first round. You're excited to come back the next day and see how Blanca does.
Yeah, I actually like that. One of my friends that I've taught like followed your channel, and that's where he gets like a lot of these crazy ideas for decks. And I'm
Good.
and a lot of the time they would work perfectly. They would be like really clean, and I'm just like, wow. I'm like, where'd you get this?
Well, that makes me feel good.
I'm just like, wow, where'd you get this idea? It's like, oh no, I watched the campus championships.
That's rad. That's really, really rad.
Yeah, and he's like, oh yeah, these characters here are secretly really good. And I remember we were talking about Stone Man.
And I love Stone Man.
And
Stone Man's so cool.
I'm sitting here, I'm like, Stone Man has like some of the weirdest rulings I've ever heard of. And this is and people like we're arguing about this over Discord.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is for a while though, because at one point, and I think I remember this, and it's somebody, and I think a judge said this on Discord, that that when Stone Man gets +1/+1, it counted as 2 instances, like 2 separate.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for a while though, when I read the rule book, it technically counted as 1 since it's 1 instance. But then they turned around and brought it back, and I'm just like, what?
Yeah. that is one of the things about Universus, right? Is the rules are so complex that honestly, there's this big barrier of entry when it comes to playing the game. The game is hard. There's card text and interactions and everything happening all over the place, and when it can be really intimidating when you first play the game. But in that complexity is the beauty of the game, right?
Yeah.
So now you, in this example, you now get to look at Stone Man in a completely different light because he does trigger off of the extra +1s+1s. So maybe when you sit down and you look at how bad Stoneman inside the meta,
Yeah.
one of the top 4 decks at Worlds this past year was Rando, who gives +1/+1 on every single attack, and that's continuing to chain along. Imagine if all those +1s/+1s you got on every attack was a -4 damage or -4 speed. You never take any damage. There's like no way that Rando gets to beat Stoneman. Like, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah,
At least not in the traditional sense of Rando playing the game.
Yeah, exactly. My friend was like, dude, he was like, yeah, people don't understand like how strong he really is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's like the real beauty of Universes. That's like what I like. That's what kept me into the game, even though like I go on and off lately. That's just mostly because of work.
Yeah, for sure.
It's the very fact that you'll find characters you find terrible at one point, but then 2-3 sets later, all of a sudden they jumped up 3 or 4 tiers, and you're just like, wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, that even happened with a character right now. Like, for example, the Retro Series event. Have you been following that at all?
Oh, actually, I was a participant of the Retro Series starting out. I just didn't have the time for the rest of it.
So Shiva ended up winning Retro Series 5, right?
Yes.
And one of the main things that Shiva does is she stuffs cards into your card pool. And so for the Retro Series 6, the one following, people were playing Akuma. And Akuma just absolutely washes that strategy because all of Akuma's attacks say face down cards in your card pool don't count towards progressive to play these cards. And so this character that used to be crazy good dropped off in popularity because of Shiva coming out, instantly became a really hard counter again. And so there's this ebb and flow of what's happening inside of the meta because of how, once again, diverse our game is.
Yes, again love it so much because especially since there are characters who just have direct counters to characters.
Yeah.
And there's like very little they could do about it.
Yeah.
Like for the longest time, one of my friends, he really loved Goro. You've probably seen him. He made so many creative decks with Goro, and then all of a sudden I figured out, all right, let me find a character who can count to 40 really fast.
Yeah, for sure. There are a lot of them now.
there are a lot of characters who could count to, because who could count to 40. Well, that's because I used to really love mid-range decks in Universes before I saw Goro, and it's just like, oh god, Goro's gonna I was like, oh god, Goro's gonna crush me. I can't stop it.
For sure.
So has there been like a particular era of meta that you really loved and you would wish that Jaska would continue with that kind of meta?
Ooh, what a fun question. So this is kind of the answer that I would give to everybody in every card game ever, right? Mm-hmm. As somebody who played Yu-Gi-Oh for a very, very long time, everybody always talks about the heyday and that it's always the grass was always greener back in the past. And a lot of Universes, people in the Universes community share that same sentiment of oh, back in X format it was way cooler. Back in X format it was way better. And honestly, I actually really enjoy the format we're in right now. I think the format that we're in is incredibly, incredibly healthy. There's obviously a biggest fish, right? There are obviously some outliers, but with even inside of the world situation that we're in with not having in-person events, Jasko has taken it upon themselves in order to make sure that kitchen table UFS stays active and fun, right? We got bans not during a tournament season, right? Ash is not a playable character any longer. Downward Spiral was ruining kitchen table UFS by people just dying on turn 1 accidentally from 14 damage attacks, right? Mm-hmm. But like even with those outliers, I still think the format was good. I still think that format was fine. It's just been polished a little bit, and there's still some
Yeah,
polishing that can happen. But honestly, like right now, I think it's like amazing top tier universes. Genuinely, genuinely.
yeah, I actually agree with you because like I was trying to figure out, okay, what are the characters I should be the most worried about? And every tournament I see, it's like a different character seeing top eight, and I'm just like, wow, I I don't really understand that. There's like one character that everybody.
So that's like. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Finish your
that's.
thought.
I was like, there's like no one character that just like dominates or just like give people headaches or. It,
For sure. I think every character in the game can be beaten.
mhm.
I think every single character in the game has potential, right? James Stevens back over at TC University, he had a tier list, and he pretty much didn't want to put anybody below C tier, which means like his C tier had like 50 characters in it, right? And I'm like, man, there's got to be a worse of characters. And he goes, no, I think pretty much every character in the game could, if they have a good run, if they got a little lucky, could top an event as long as the person piloting the deck is good enough, which is where like the real strength of this game comes into play. If you understand how the game works and then you get proficient at how the game works, it very much feels like that fighting game grind. I have to know how Street Fighter works, and then I have to be able to execute those buttons correctly. I can have memorized code or memorize the sequence of button clicking all I want, but unless I can actually perform those things, it's the same thing here with Universes. You can spend all the money that you want, but if you don't have the skills to back up that card playing, a lot of times the better player will come and rise to the top.
Yeah, exactly. Two of our best players, Deshaun Fulbright and Stephen Jones, like
Mm-hmm.
they, especially Stephen, and Stephen pretty much guided me through you. He didn't teach me how to play, but he taught me, how to understand, how to actually play the game.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like there's like understanding, there's like knowing the basics, and then getting to that next level of okay, yeah, this is how it really is.
For sure.
I just wish in tournaments I could stop being last place.
Everybody's got to take their licks. There's
Yeah,
always got to be that last place person. But I mean, the goal should be, let's go get a tie. Let's.
no, it's fine. What makes me more happy though, it's generally the people who I taught Universus or UFS. They're the ones ending up topping.
Yeah.
So that makes me feel better about myself.
Hey, that's awesome. That's awesome. There is something to be said. Like every good esports team has a coach, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that is literally my that is for a while that was literally my nickname was Coach.
Oh, that's fun.
um yeah, so all right, so we're gonna ask the opposite. What was the meta that you hated the most?
Oh, this is a really good one. The meta that almost made me quit the game, honestly, like honestly quit the game, was the introduction of the Cowboy Bebop meta of the shift the power dynamic inside of the game. One of my local players, Jacob Johnson, made a Punch and Judy jet deck that I literally was 0 and 100 with. I would play 100 games with him, and I literally couldn't take a game off of him, let alone a match, right? And I threw everything in the kitchen sink at him, and I'm like, I literally can't beat this deck, and I don't want out putting on my pride. Ugh, gross. I don't want to play that deck. And so there was this real jump in power level that kind of pushed these characters and pushed these cards a little bit further above and beyond. But in retrospect, I just honestly didn't do enough digging. I didn't do enough looking. There were answers inside of that format for things that I could have and should have done, but I was so closed-minded in the way that I was playing the game that I just could not adapt to the new way to play the game. Where
Yeah.
Jake is exceptionally good at finding this new technology. Him and Mark Tyner and Barrett Bryan over on over on Universus Studios, they are phenomenal at finding this new technology that is pushing the game forward.
That is actually like really crazy, because I remember the Cowboy Bebop meta just blindsided my whole group.
Yeah.
And I mean completely blindsided. They were just like, and yeah, like one of my friends, he built a jet deck, made the entire group just rage.
Right.
I mean, I mean, we were calling him Two Trick Pony, because that, because like we learned a lot. That jet deck only had 2 tricks up his sleeve, and they worked so well.
Yeah. You hit somebody with an allurophobia with a bunch of Punch Judies on it, they die. They for sure die. Yeah.
Foundations, who need those?
Who needs that's awesome. Yeah. But yeah, I can't think of a format inside of Universes that is that I have not enjoyed or has been stale, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've enjoyed pretty much everything.
Yeah. The one that I found out that it was like secretly a really strong set, but
Mhm.
a lot of people overlooked it just because how small it was Street Fighter versus Darkstalkers.
That is actually my favorite set in the game.
That is actually mine too. I even got
Yeah.
the comic books.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
um,
So what about Street Fighter vs. Darkstalkers do you like so much?
I love the characters a lot. They all really stood out. Like, there wasn't this whole big issue of hey, why play this character where this character's better? It's more like, hey, you could play this character. Like, I'll give like an example between Cassie Cage and Lilith. They're like, oh,
Right.
you could, like, on certain symbols, you could play Cassie Cage. On Earth, Lilith might be a little better. Depends.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I really like Street Fighter vs. Darkstalkers, and a lot of people don't like this, of the fact that I think that set is so new player friendly. Of if you want to make a functioning deck, you just take all of this character support and toss it in them, add maybe 20 cards, and then you're set to go. You're good. You can just run it. And that the design of that set, maybe things were a little torqued power wise, but I really like the idea of you wanting to play your character's support. And if you want to get extra in Fringe, you can go find extra pieces and do extra stuff. But you have a totally functioning deck if you take any of those characters and their support and just pop them together. Love it.
Yeah, that's also what I loved about Street Fighter versus Darkstalkers. It's because the 2 hardest things I find myself, and I actually like have long conversations about this. 2 hardest things I find about Universes is deck building and field awareness.
Ooh. Okay. That could be a whole nother podcast that's talking about those 2 separate things. Wow.
Yeah, just straight deck building and field awareness. And Street Fighter versus Darkstalkers helps with one of them. The other one, It's like, yeah, you have to be paying a lot of attention, because imagine pretty much everything does something, and if you don't know how to stop it or counter it, or which one's bad enough to let go and which ones do you really want to stop, these are the ones that are like, oh my god. Yeah, and I actually tell people who are interested into the game, I was like, look, starting out, it's a lot to take in. Once you got it, like, you got it.
Right. Yeah.
If you got any questions, you can ask, like, which one of my friends, he is really good with the rulings.
Mm-hmm.
He is like really, really good with the rulings. It's unbelievable. Like, he should be like a higher tier judge, but he doesn't want to do that. He wants to actually play the game.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the judge program's gonna pop off here. Everybody's waiting for the red belt test to come out.
Yeah. So how'd you get picked to like do not really announcers to be like the well, actually yeah, it is one of the announcers guys for like Jasco tournaments.
Oh, it's simple. It's simple, really. I just did it.
You just did it?
Yeah, just like in every industry, if there is a hole to be filled, the people who are pushing above and beyond will just find a way to do it, right?
Okay.
I was laying in my bed really late one night. It was right after Worlds 2020, right? And I learned a lot at that World, but the main thing that I took away was that the game of Universus has had so many amazing champions, right? You have the Mark Tyners, the Phil Birches, the Garrett Bretts, the Kevin Brobergs, the Jeremy Rays. Like you've got these big, huge names. What the game doesn't have, the game doesn't need any more champs. The game needs a face.
Mhm.
The game needs somebody that you can associate it to. And so that is why I made it a point of, hey, in this retro event, I'm going to not play. I have not played in a single Universus event for the entire year. My last event was Worlds, right? We've had all these online tournaments. I haven't played in one. Not because I lack the desire, but because it is more important to let the good people know what's going on inside that event. Jasco currently does not have the capability of broadcasting out the quality that they want, and so that they just haven't been doing it. And so as a member of this amazing community, I just took it upon myself just to pick up the mantle and just do it, you know?
You know what? I couldn't have picked a more perfect person for that.
Oh, well, thanks.
All right. So how do you feel about like with the current like DLC and sets Jasco's releasing? Like how do you like in their current states, like outside of meta, like we're talking about like pretty much everything else in that perspective.
Clarify your question just a little bit more. You're asking like release schedules or
I it's hard for me to describe. It's kind of like the feel of like, let's say the DLC sets. And
do I think the power level is going up, down, staying the same?
uh actually, do you think actually yeah, I could ask that if you think the power level's going up, down, staying the same.
Um so it's interesting for everything that is currently being printed on actual cardboard.
Yeah.
I believe that the power level is staying roughly the same. There are good cards, there are okay cards, there are a few, I'll call them niche cards. I'm not sure that they're necessarily bad, but they're certainly niche.
Yeah.
And I think all the printed DLC that we've had so far has been good. Some things, once again, good, fine, niche. I will say with the public playtesting cards that we have, I actually think the power level is going down a little bit, which is a little spooky because we have set this precedent. It's very hard to sell cards that are underpowered from the last set. And I think with that said, the gaps of those three tiers that I just said of good, fine, niche, those tiers have just spread further apart from each other. Yeah, as opposed to like the whole set being down lower, you know?
Yeah. I actually have that same feeling sometimes with Magic, but they have like they have like a bunch of different formats, so but anyways,
Yeah. And so you get to kind of pick and choose the power level depending on how you want to play.
yeah. Yeah, okay, so what about design? Like pretty much like design of like the DLCs and the sets coming out, and like pretty much like, does it fit the flavor, or does it like, can you like have it like fit a certain flavor, or can it be like, oh well. Play
Do you mean about current cards or like in Universes as a whole? Because as a whole, you can make cards feel exactly how they're supposed to, exactly how the game wants you to feel, right? Or from the original IP.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna do more currently because like I know I've done that with a lot of sets that I really liked. I tried that with Street Fighter, and it just Only with Vega where it like came out the way I wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think design is fine. I think the most recent set, as I said back when we were talking about the current meta, I think the most recent set of cards were a little torqued, but with more things coming in on the horizon, I think things will start to peter out. Obviously, there are ups and downs in order to keep an average, right?
Okay.
Otherwise, things get stale and boring. Because like if you take and you look at Libra of Souls as an entire set versus something on the lines of Seventh Cross. Seventh Cross, honestly, is more interesting than Libra, but
Yeah.
Seventh Cross is not nearly as strong card text wise as Libra of Souls. And so we have the low point, we have the high point, and they kind of even each other out. And so we have this cohesive meta.
I actually did like Seventh Cross as well. That was like a pretty interesting set, but
Oh, love the gauge mechanic. It's so cool. Stacking characters is like the neatest thing.
but the weird thing about it's like only half the characters in Seventh Cross were like super viable, were like actually viable, and the other half just where you needed a lot of work.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not apparent how to make them the best possible.
Yeah.
Oh.
Who knows? There could be sets that make them super strong. So
Yeah, there's a Seventh Cross declarable content coming out here in the second wave of the DLCs. So we will see. There might be plenty more Gauge stuff.
oh,
Sounds
cool.
cool.
That is actually pretty cool. So what is like your biggest concern when it comes to like Jasco pushing forward when it comes to Universus?
My biggest concern of Jasco. Um, honestly, I think Jasco has handled 2019 exceptionally well when it comes to universes. We, as a world, stumbled really hard with 2020,
Yeah.
and because of how small of an operation Jasco is and how tight they can maneuver, they kind of stopped all production. What I'm afraid of is that we are taking just a little bit too much time to kick that production and pick our stuff back up from our stumble. Well, do I think that they can do it? Yeah, obviously. I know that they can. I believe in Jasco. And this might be me just being greedy, wanting more cards. But I am excited for 2021 for them to have picked themselves up from this stumble, trying to be extremely safe and cut as much pandemic as possible out of people's lives and really push forward with the rest of their plans that they had to put on hold.
That's pretty cool. That's actually pretty cool. That is actually one of my concerns as well. The other one is like when they announced the MHA set, my concern is that they're going to probably have one of their licensees do a lot of executive meddling. And it just
Ooh, okay.
and they're not going to tell us it's going to happen, but you could pretty much tell when that happens, if that happens.
Have you met Jason? Like,
Uh,
have you met Jason, the owner of Jasco?
I think I've shook his hand a few times, but I have not like actually sat with him.
That is totally fine. Jason, both a blessing and a curse, is a control freak. So I'm positive that as much as the My Hero Academia execs are like making and pushing their demands, Jason is fighting for the game just as much as anybody. I'm not positive there's a person on the planet that wants Universus to succeed as much as Jason Horonsky does. He really puts his heart, soul, blood and tears into this game, and so I really wouldn't be concerned about the My Hero execs putting their hands all over the game that Jason loves so much. I wouldn't be concerned about that.
All right. So if there is if you had a dream license that Jasco would get, which one would you pick?
Okay. So I've got a couple here. The easy cheating answer is Super Smash Brothers. Duh. getting Nintendo into the game would be absolutely amazing. Every time that a Smash Brothers game comes out, it is like the number one contender for fighting game. It hits a very broad audience, and it hits so many IPs, right? So it hits so many intellectual properties of Mario to Zelda to Metroid, all the way up to if we get it right, we just got Sephiroth in Smash. Could you imagine? I understand that Final Fantasy has their own card game, but could you imagine Sephiroth fighting Spike from Cowboy Bebop? Oh, it'd be so cool. It'd be so cool. But if I couldn't pick the juggernaut of Super Smash Brothers, I actually think one of the coolest IPs that you could get would be old school Cartoon Network cartoons. Your Dexter's Laboratory, your Johnny Bravo, your Powerpuff Girls. I think that would be I'll use this word, retro enough in order to like really hit the people who are just past millennial, right? Yeah, I think like Samurai Jack, the Codename Kids Next Door. Like I think all those would be super super cool and really appropriate to have inside of our game. I think you could easily do that.
Those are actually amazing choices. I have never thought about that.
Yeah.
I was like, well, Arc Sys is getting bigger. You should probably invest in them. But I was like, no, that's actually better.
Yeah. I mean people watch cartoons and TV way more than they play video games, specifically fighting games, which is why this My Hero pick is so huge. Before My Hero was announced, I would have picked My Hero. Like I would have picked My Hero Academia like 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah. Okay, so there was an interesting quote I heard. I think it was either a year or 2 years ago. The future of UFS or Universus is actually not in fighting games. It's actually more in like anime and other stuff. Do you actually believe this quote? I think
I think there was something to be said, kind of back to that first point that I just made, that if you want to be mainstream, you either have to force yourself into the mainstream or borrow from the mainstream, right? Adapt or die. So the fact that we had Yu Yu Hakusho is cool. That anime is over. The fact that we had Cowboy Bebop, that anime is over. My Hero's coming out. My Hero's still live. People are pumped for season 5. People are going to be excited and pushing for it because it's a new idea for this way that when you look at a different card game, Weiss Schwarz, they are constantly adding in new properties, new animes of existing of new licenses, new thoughts in order to push the envelope of their game. Universus could do that same thing, not even necessarily with just anime. It could be literally any pop culture that you want. If you spend the bucks and get Star Wars, it's gonna blow up. You could have Doctor Who in this. The nerd culture picks that you could pull from and use the UFS Universal Fighting System game mechanics in is amazing. It's the options are literally limitless. All options are on the table, and if you close yourself off and paint yourself into this corner of no, we are a fighting games game, you are just leaving so much on the table. You're leaving so much.
That's actually pretty interesting. That is actually really cool. Let's see. So is there like a particular character like in Universus that you would that is like your go-to character just
I always say that Scorpion is my old college fling, right? There is every time that I play Scorpion, I get an absolute rush for the first 2 weeks that I play him, and then something happens and I remember why I put him down, and then I put him down for a month, and then I think back and go, man, Scorpion was so cool. And then I build him again and I have a blast and it's amazing. And then 2 weeks later, I realize why I put him back down. And then it's just this vicious cycle when it comes to Scorpion. But yeah, some of the characters that I really enjoy are Faye because of how intricate her deck building is. I like Astaroth is something I'm toying around with currently. Xiangmina. I like these I like to play characters and abilities that when I play them are very swingy, huge abilities. So when it comes to Astaroth being like, hey, I'm gonna put a bunch of damage on this, and if you interact with it in any way, I'm gonna mess with your staging area. Or Songmina saying, hey, my attack gets +3 speed, stun 3, and if you block it, it's gonna come back to my hand. You're gonna have to deal with it again. And these big, massive, swingy plays, as opposed to the micro pushes of pushing the game forward. You know?
All right, that's pretty interesting. That's actually really cool. Like, that's pretty much why I love like our little half of the group, because it like pretty much like our group's like split into two halves, and and it's just mostly because of distance.
Yeah.
Yeah, Houston's a vast city, man. I don't want to drive 2 hours to go to like to go
Yeah,
to
that
the
sounds
place
awful.
that goes to the place that does all the premier store events.
Right.
and and then have one of my buddies like get smashed so hard he comes to me and say I want to go home, and I'm just like, no, I can't do that. We're here all day. so so like looking back in your other card games, like how would you fare like Universus, like between like all your past card games experiences?
Universus is the best card game that there is. Full stop.
Full
Full
stop.
stop. The like I said, the only issue with Universus is its barrier to entry. Once you understand the mechanics and once you get over that hump, it's a lot like climbing a mountain, right?
Mm-hmm.
You start to climb this mountain, and it's tough. It's really, really hard. And a lot of people give up. A lot of people quit because of how difficult climbing this mountain is. But once you get up to the top, you then see the beauty of the multitude of mountain ranges that you get to now explore and climb. And I feel like a lot of card games, at least for me personally, I've never experienced that with, right? The biggest card game that I've played and have had success in is Yu-Gi-Oh! I've gone to nationals for Yu-Gi-Oh! Plenty of times, but it always felt like the cards were playing me as opposed to me and the cards working together. That's like really lame and like really introspective, but like it's just how I feel, right? I felt
Yeah.
like it wasn't like a conjoined relationship, and I feel like when I'm playing Universes, it is me and my deck versus my opponent and their deck, and it is like a dance back and forth. It's honestly, it is a thing of beauty. It's so cool.
Yeah. That, all right. Okay. So what are the craziest set of rules you have encountered? Where you look at it and you're just like, wait a minute, this isn't right. Wait a minute. Hold on, let me go back to the rule book. Oh, well, it's right.
So a fun one is that like because of the idea of would and could meaning the same thing inside of our timing, a lot of stuff happens before something would happen. So this was out on the Discord. Kevin Broberg, one of the champs, one of Rochester CCG's champs, was talking about the fact that Orphan Alchemist can stop Fade because Fade could potentially put an action from your discard pile back into your hand, and Orphan Alchemist says that your opponent Orphan Alchemist cancels an ability that would make a card leave your discard pile or your deck. And so if Fade, it doesn't cancel the card, but like puts it from your discard pile back in your hand, Orphan Alchemist could cancel it. And since it could cancel it at that one time, it can cancel it every time. So like these are the kind of hoops that you get to kind of run through when you're talking about Universes, but that just goes to show you all of the cool interactions. For every one Fade Orphan Alchemist interaction, there's 10 to 100 cool interactions that like you didn't necessarily see coming, right?
Yeah, that's like one thing I really loved about Dejanette from
Right.
Seventh Cross, because she is like full of those insane interactions.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and then on top of that, she combos like so much things on top of it, and I'm just like, Man, this is literally the death and taxes deck of Universus.
For sure. Yeah.
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 um, so to me, like the craziest thing, and this is like in no other game I've experienced, is the fact that you can actually respond to static abilities.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, no other game does this because it's like, okay, it already happened, therefore you can't counter it. In
Right.
Universus, it's like, no, no, there's that window, go counter it.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on the timing of when you get to what your cards say and when you're allowed to interact with stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I actually find that amazing. So, so, um, so on top of that, like, what do you see in the like yourself in the future when it comes to universes?
Oh, what a great question. Like I said, I don't think that the game needs Tamren Cardwell as a champ. Do I want to be on a champ card? Do I want to win and earn one of those cards? Yeah, absolutely. I've got a I've it would be very, very cool to have a little card of myself, but it is not what the game needs. My goal is to run my channel, youtube.com/tamcardwell, as an information hub for the game, as maybe some longer form strategy guides, or going over on twitch.tv/tamcardwell and playing a bunch of games, doing tier lists, a lot of play test. As soon as My Hero comes out, my goal is to be the #1 My Hero Academia collectible card game resource, right? Like that's the goal of being this face that when a new player comes into the game and they're a lost soul, they are the one person, as I said at the very, very beginning of this, they're the one person who tries to jump into the game, they'll have a resource, they'll have somebody they can come and talk to. That's the goal. Yeah.
That is actually a really good goal because, again, had a like we moved our group to a new store, and a lot of people got a lot of interested because they love the characters they see,
Yeah.
and I tell them, it's like, all right, I'll teach you how to play. I'll even build a deck for you. Maybe Pauper, but I'll build a deck for you.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna tell you straight up, a lot to take in.
Yeah.
It,
You got to climb that mountain.
got to climb that mountain. You can't give up because once you see the beauty of it, it's gonna be worth it.
For sure. For sure.
Uh, and I'll even teach him like a lot of the tips and tricks and like how to even get really good at the game really fast. um so speaking of which, so would this mean that you will have like your mini series, something like your best damn deck or your deck profiles to come back?
I'm not necessarily sure what the future holds content wise. I'm kind of going off the cuff when it comes to what I want, right? This is really me exploring what content creation looks like on this half. It's very easy for somebody like TCG University with their resources and their time and their message to make a lot of deck profiles, right? Deck profiles are fine. They're not something I want to flood my channel with, right? When My Hero comes out, I'm sure I'll be talking about how the characters work, and I'm thinking more tips and strategy guides as opposed to something that you're allowed to net deck and explore off from there, because there are other people with other resources that can do that. No.
Yeah, that's like an interesting thing about Universus is that, even though net decking's like encouraged, but it's not the optimal thing.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because like a good character. That's an example of this is Vicious, because Vicious is a character where you could build them to be like really controlling. You could have them sit there and control the field, or you could sit there and build them in a way where you could just pound your opponent's face in. um, like I've seen it both ways. It's actually pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and that kind of shows you where there are some characters who are really, I wouldn't say pigeonholed into their gimmick, right? Like a Lord Raptor deck, 99% flashes, but like a Vicious deck, you can play whatever you want, man. Like his ability is so open and scaled and wide.
Yeah. And I actually talked, and I've actually talked to one of the people, like one of my friends, about this. I was like, look, it some characters are straight up. You could be as creative as you want, and you can make it work. All you
Right.
got to, but the whole thing is you have once you when you build that deck, you have to understand pound for pound how it works.
For
Like
sure.
like what card you're using for each situation, what card you're using, like for what situation you're using this card, and should you put it in the sideboard, and all that kind
Right.
of good stuff.
Yeah.
And that's and
A lot of good,
that's
lot of good cards.
yeah, and that's actually another thing I really loved is the simple fact that that they're pushing more and more to every card being useful for something, at
Mm-hmm.
least sideboard worthy,
Right.
and not just have some throwaway. Oh yeah, this card, don't even use it. And I actually,
Yeah.
yeah, I actually like really really love that.
Yeah. I think I think it's a really good part of Universes as well. Like
Mhm.
using the whole set, every piece of cardboard. There are no trash cards in our game,
Mhm.
with a small asterisk, of course.
um, so pretty much, with that being said, thank you so much for joining me.
Well,
Like
thank you for having me.
uh, I wish the best, man. I hope the game like just blossoms out and they use you as that resource.
I hope so as well.
All right, man. This is Magic Underwood, and I am out. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead.